Welcome back to another episode of the Winners Club podcast, where even when we don't win, we learn, and learning is a form of winning. I'm your host, Brian Tran. I got my co-host here, PJ Padua.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
And today, guys, we have another special guest. This man is, I would say, the king of leadership. He's been there. He's done that. He's the author of 9 Minutes on Monday, which basically simplifies how to become a great leader without causing a lot of discrepancy, right? Because we always get in our own head. But he also has a brand new book. And I have it right here, The Call to Climb. And I want to talk a little bit more about this one as well. So without further ado, James, welcome to the show.
Brian, thank you. You're the first one to ever call me the king of leadership, by the way. Good to see you guys. Good to be on the show here.
James, I got to ask you, why writing books? In the day and age, I feel like it's so hard where you could just go and make a video. Why books? How did you get into writing books?
Well, that's because I predate you a little bit, I think, Brian. And back in, I don't know when it was, when I was first starting my consulting company and I was speaking on stages. And back then it was just, you need a book. There was like no other, it was just what you had to do. And so that's how 9 Minutes on Monday came out, my first book. That's like 13 years ago now. And but yeah, the space has changed a lot. I don't know how many more books are going to be actually written by humans after the next couple of years, but I hope so, because people have stories inside of them, and your stories have gold nuggets for other people. So it's good to tell them. And not everyone likes to watch a video. That's what I've learned.
Your leadership skills, obviously when people see books and they see like the knowledge here, but nowadays I feel like with the younger audience, we're always saying, well, with ChatGPT, everybody has the skills and the knowledge, but where did your leadership skills come from?
Yeah, I grew up on a small cattle ranch in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. I was this shy, introverted, redheaded kid who couldn't get a girlfriend. And so, by the time I graduated college, I didn't have this view of myself as a leader, but as life does, threw me sort of a curveball. And I ended up working for this church for a while. And then I went into ministry, which wasn't even on my top 100 possible things I might do with my life. And so I went into ministry, and over the years, rose up in that till I was leading churches, some small, some large. And it was in ministry for years. That's where I cut my teeth on leadership. It sort of followed John Maxwell's path, ministry and then into teaching on leadership. Because ministry, almost like any other not-for-profit, is that you might be leading this staff, but then you're leading this massive group of volunteers. You can't fire them. You can't kick them out. You just have to figure out what drives them. And so that's where I got my PhD in just understanding people, how to move them, what leverage points do I need to push on for this person and this person. So by the time I started my consultancy firm teaching leadership in the corporate world, honestly, at first I had all these insecurities, like, well, what do I know, right? What do I know about leadership? Till I got into the corporate world, and I was like, oh, I actually know a lot because I've been in the trenches. So that's my path. That's where I came from.
How many years of ministry before you decided, hey, I'm going to go into starting my own consultancy firm?
It was at least 15. It was at least 15. And it took me a long time to actually get out. In fact, I got out for a little bit, then went back in. And then what really got me out was, so I wrote the book 9 Minutes on Monday. It got a lot of traction. And then John Maxwell, who was always this, mentor of mine, not that I knew him, but the first leadership book I ever read was his 21 Laws of Leadership. And it resonated with me, right? Because he was a pastor, I think, when he wrote that. Anyways, I ended up getting invited by John Maxwell and his team to go with him down to South America and train 1,000 business leaders. And so it was literally just him and I for an entire day. Now, obviously, he was the headline. I was the warm-up act and the give John a break act. I knew my place, but still, it was this great moment for me because I hung out with him. We made a connection. And then when we got back to the US, we connected for lunch. And I was still in ministry then. And that's when I said, hey, John, how did you know it was time to make a transition out of ministry? And so he told me his story. And I thought, I've been feeling like that for years. So I need to make this happen. And so that's when I really doubled down and went full time.
Was it fear that was holding you back, or what was holding
100%.
you back?
100%, mostly fear, because there's I had children that were still at home. And so there's the financial fear. But anytime we've got to leave something, and you guys know this, right? Like anytime we got to leave something to go to something new, as much as we might be excited about the business idea, or we might be convinced that it's going to be successful, we still have to leave something. And leaving something is so difficult, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's a car that you've been with for so long. It's always tough to leave because you have to cut part of yourself off with it as well. So yeah, it was fear 99%.
Let me ask you this, because a lot of the people in the audience, they want to start something, but they always have the fear of failure, the fear of doubt. What what would you say to them to get them out of that fear mode and into the growth mode?
Well, I love how you start your podcast about, I can't remember exactly the tagline, but it was about that even if you fail, like you learn, and learning is the most important thing. And it's so true. So if I could go back to a story that I think would typify it is, I told you I grew up this shy, introverted kid. I couldn't speak in public. At least that's what I'd convinced myself. I was this young college student, and I was attending this church, and then the preacher came to me and he said, "Hey, we want you to get up as a college student in front of the congregation and talk about what you're learning in your Bible." I was like, me? Like my last speech was a total failure when I was 7 years old, thanking the coach at the hockey banquet at the end of the year, right? But that trauma was still there. And, I felt like I couldn't say no. So I was like, okay, I got to do this. And I just spent the next week like moping and whining about it. Like, oh, woe is me. And this is terrible, right? Like that anxiety of I might fail. And I still remember just sitting on this football field, and it was like I heard a voice in my head that said, could you just for once, like, not care what people think and just do it? It was so clear. And I thought, all right, I'll do it. And you know what? If I'm going to fail, I might as well fail big, like make it a great story. Like, let's do this. So, I end up preparing, and which I'd never done before, just avoided it. So I ended up preparing. I get up there and I thought, okay, I'm just going to give it and I'm going to go for it. And I was nervous, of course, but I just did it with passion. And when I got done, person after person came up to me and they're like, hey, you should do more of that. And it was like this moment, like an eye-opening moment of what happens when you just push through your fears. And so much of that fear is so ego-driven, right? Like we're so afraid of what that's going to look like. And, it took me a lot of years to learn the lesson that you guys already know, which is there's lessons in failing. And have you guys ever heard of the moth? It's like a storytelling competition.
No.
You guys ever heard of that?
No.
So I hadn't heard of it either, but it's apparently well known. Just none of us knew about it. But anyways, I found out the moth is like these storytelling events in every city. And what happens? They're once a month. So you'll go down there, you put your name in a hat. And if they choose your name, you got to get up and tell a story for 5 minutes. You get judged. At the end of the night, they rank the people. And I thought, I wonder if there's one in the city that I live in. So I looked it up and I'm like, sure enough, there was. It was like 3 weeks away. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go. And then there was that voice, well, you should enter the competition. I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to do that. Here's me now who's been on stage about 3,000 times, right? Like when it comes to speaking on stages, I'm near the top of my field. But there was still that hesitation of, well, I don't know if I want to go because I've never seen it before. But then I was like, no, just do it. So I show up at this thing, and it's like actually in a big auditorium with a balcony. I didn't expect that. And now I'm thinking, I don't want to do this. I don't even know. I want to see it first before I like put my name in. But I was like, no, I'd already committed. So I went down, put my name in, went up to the balcony because there was no seats left. And I'd brought my kids, my daughter, she's in her 20s. And then I looked at her and I said, do you ever do something that you immediately thought that was a bad idea? And she just laughed. And I said, well, as long as I don't get picked first, because I've literally never seen this before. And they start the night and they're like, and our first storyteller is James Robbins. And I was like, no. And so I go down there and I tell this story. I went over time. I didn't use the secret word you're supposed to use. But the good news is after I was done, I was in first place. And until the second person went, and then the third. And I just started falling down the order. And I finished the night in sixth place. And there's not a chance that anyone in that auditorium has been on stage more than I have been. And here I get wiped out in a local storytelling competition. And I left there, I was ego hurt for sure. Like there's no way that story was better than mine. Like I did that for about 30 minutes and then I softened and then I laughed. And I said to my girlfriend, I said, that's pretty funny. Like I'm the most experienced there and I just got wiped out in a local storytelling competition. And she said, yeah, that's funny. But you know what's interesting is, think about that story. Like I tell that story now actually when I'm speaking to audiences. And which version do you think is going to be more impactful? That version, which is the true version, or had I just waltzed up and cranked it and won first place? That's not a story at all. So this is a long way to say part of our failures become great stories And great stories, people love to hear them. They inspire people. So, yeah, you've got to just understand it's your fear that's stopping you. Of course, mitigate your risks, but then you just have to go for it. And don't wait to feel like you're ready. You just
You'll
got to
never
do
be
it.
ready. You will
No, you
never be
won't.
ready. You thought you were ready going on stage. You spoke 3,000 times and you went to your local event and you thought that you had it, but hey, you'll never be ready. And that's
Wiped
okay.
out. Wiped out. Yep.
PJ, what
Yeah.
you got for Mr. James Robin?
I just want to, talk a little bit more about your first book and how that was. When you first initially wanted to start writing it, was it just were you on fire? Was it easy? Did you have like roadblocks during the process, or what was launching that book like?
PJ, that was definitely a wrestling match for sure. But the book came out of a workshop that I'd been doing for a couple of years, which made the book a lot easier to write because so much of writing anything, right, is getting the structure. It's the same with the speech. The structure is actually the most important, and it just takes a while to whittle that down. Well, because I'd been doing that workshop again and again and again, editing each time, then when it came time for the book, it was like, okay, the book was in a sense there. I just had to write it. Now, that doesn't mean that was easy for me because I had all these insecurities as well. Like, I'm not a good writer. I suck as a writer. I don't even know why this sentence is called a fragmented sentence, but my mom, put a big red line on it. So there was all of that. But what happened was I was speaking at this conference and I didn't even have the book, but I was like, I'm going to make that, when you put your goal out there, and so you're going to really commit to it. So at the end of my talk, I was like, oh, I just want you to know that I have a new book coming out, in October. And I flashed the cover on the screen. Well, I haven't even started, but in the audience was the senior editor for McGraw-Hill. And he came up to me and he's like, hey, so you got a book coming out? And he goes, let's talk. And so I went from just putting this out there to the senior editor of McGraw-Hill Business is in the audience and then comes up to me. And then, was still a bit of a story after that. But that's how that happened. But yeah, there were times I left it for like a month, PJ, and then I'd be like, okay, come on, man, you got to get this done. And once McGraw-Hill was on the radar, then I was like, oh, I better work.
Tell me more about that. What is the book business like? Do these editors give you money to write the book and then they'll take a percentage of sales, or do they, you partner with them so that they can get the distribution? I've always wondered that. Like, is there money
Yeah.
in books?
The publishing industry, I mean, I don't know why they haven't changed more, but basically what they do is they offer you an advance. So if they're going to buy the rights to your books, that's the thing. They're buying the rights to your book, which means you no longer own them. But they give you an advance. For me, that first book was like $7,500 or something, which, is probably pretty low, but I wasn't famous or anything. So they give you that, you write the book, and that advance is just an advance, meaning like that comes out of your royalties. So until you pay that back, so to speak. But you don't really go with a publisher to make money. I mean, I don't know, what do I make, like $1 on every book that
Not bad.
gets sold? A book that's $25 and I get $1 because the publisher is selling it to, let's say, Amazon for $12. And so if I'm getting whatever 25% on the $12, I don't know, maybe $1, $2. But you just don't make a ton. But there's the reach, right? Like they have the reach. Although I don't know that they have the reach like they used to. So that's how it works. And then I say they have the reach, but at the same time, they look back at you and like, what are you doing to get your book sold?
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute, you're making more money on this than me. So why am I doing all the work? But I think the thing I did right about 9 Minutes on Monday was I created a lead capture in the book, and that alone just drove my business for a decade because that brought people into my world, into my leadership teaching. And, eventually I created an online program around the book, and that's still our top seller.
Wow. I think that's amazing. I think, even though, like you said, maybe it's not going to be, piles of money, but the ability to reach people, right, and connect. Because, I am a big fan of reading books. It's the best way for me to connect with like the author, the person, the idea. So I think just having that is a really good way to just know like this is a good way to reach people and get your message down and ultimately expand, your side of the business, right? It's not always just a money thing, but it can just be an awareness thing. It's like the original like advertisement kind of like pre like Facebook, pre organic social media posts. Like the book was kind of that first thing, with the newspapers and all that.
Yeah, 100%. And there still is authority that comes with books. I think less so now, but there still is an authority because, man, it does take a lot to write a book. Well, I think it takes even more to write a good book.
Mm-hmm.
Now with AI getting better and better, I mean, where are we going to be in 2 years in the publishing industry? I don't know. But I can tell you this, a big moment for me when that first book was published was going to the bookstore and finding my book. Like that was this big moment going into Barnes and Noble. This newest book that just came out, I went to Barnes and Noble and I couldn't even find it. I had to go back a second time. I couldn't find it because there's so many books. I finally had to ask, do you guys have this book? And then it took them a while to find it, but we found it. It was like buried, like needle in a haystack. So yeah.
I want to go into your book in a little bit, but speaking of leadership, through your experience, the climate's kind of changed a little bit, but not so much. I think there's still a core principle that people have to abide by. What would you say makes a great leader and a terrible one? Like through your trends.
Well, I will point to some of the research that Jim Collins did just as they crunched the data about what typified the best of the best leaders. And that would be my findings as well, although they're not so much data driven. But, in his book, Good to Great, he talks about level 5 leaders and how they have a professional will, right? So they're driven, they know where they're going, but they have a personal humility and it's balanced. So when you think about, so much of leadership is about unlocking potential. And for everyone who's listening, who either you're a small business owner or you want to start a company, well, eventually you're going to have to hire people, right? And, unless you're going to AI the whole thing, but you're going to have to hire people. And what you have to understand about people is that people have this enormous range of possibility and potential, just like we do, right? Like some days we show up to work and we're not our best and other days we're our best, but that's a massive difference in productivity. So much of leadership is how do you unlock everyone's potential so they're bringing the best of what they can to work every day, right? And so we have enough data now, we know what those things are. And that's what 9 Minutes on Monday is about. It's like, how do we tap into those, what I call engagement drivers? So the best leaders are driven because we need a direction. Like leadership creates the direction, but there's the personal humility because that creates the psychological safety that unlocks for people, right? When people show up to work, instead of spending energy to not get in trouble, not get fired, if they don't have to even worry about all that, then all that energy can go towards what are we doing, which the leader has the direction. And that's why those two things are so powerful together. Does that make sense?
It does. No. Wow. Which leads me to my next question. What's one leadership trend you think is total BS?
What's one leadership trend that's a total BS? There's definitely a bunch of them. I think some of them are starting to fall by the wayside. So one of them, I'm going to say this is, okay, there, in a sense, there's no actual one perfect style of leadership. And one of the problems that happens to us when we're young is that when we become leaders, we draw upon our own experience of people who've led us in the past. And that becomes our kind of, I was going to say encyclopedia, but that really dates me about, okay, this is what it means to be a leader. Well, my first two leaders were like driven, authoritative, you just do it this way, micromanagers. And so I was like, well, I guess that's leadership, but that's not me. But okay, I got to be that. And it was this just terrible time of having to be someone I felt like I wasn't and feeling guilty about that, feeling insecure about that. So it took me a while to realize that, wait a minute, I can be me. I can be me. Of course, I need to bring a best version of me. And I'm more like a coaching style leader, definitely a bit more democratic. Like with our staff, I'll be like, what do you guys think? What do you think we should do? I'm always using the we pronoun, asking them for input, bringing them along. So that would be one thing I would say is that you've got to have the confidence that who you are is enough. Yes, you got to learn leadership skills, of course, but those leadership skills are all going to be filtered through you, who you are. And at the same time, it's okay if you're an authoritative leader. Just make sure that you're balancing the blind side and making sure that people feel like you care about them. So every style has a blind side. So as long as you're covering that, great, you can continue to lean in.
James, I agree with you because sometimes I notice that with my style, I use the we a lot, but sometimes you need to go into the, you're right, this isn't working. It's not moving fast enough or people kind of lose motivation and maybe I'm not hitting the full 9 steps that you have laid out in the book, but then I switch gears and I go, boom, market's tough right now. We don't have time for this we got to go with my way because my way will get us through the light. And then after that, we can go back to the we. What do you say about that? Like, is that wrong? Is it confusing for my team, or is that okay?
No, that's reading the terrain. Like, so let's use the analogy of climbing a mountain and you're a mountain guide. You don't guide the same on all parts of the mountain, right? There's some parts it's open, it's safer. We don't even need to be roped together. But there's other parts it's like, hey guys, we're crossing this ridge. We're all going to be roped together. We can't afford mistakes. And so this is what we're doing. And so that's great leadership, is being able to read the terrain and adjust how you're directing people, right? That's the end of the day. We're directing this energy that we call people to try to get something done. And yeah, there are times, like I said, there's different styles, right? And every style in a sense has a weak side. So I'll give you a weak side of mine. So because I am a really collaborative coaching leader, that is great for engagement. It's great for people feeling like, hey, I love my job. I love the team. But the downside is from time to time, people can start to take advantage of that. And which means from time to time, I have to have that conversation. Hey guys, and kind of snap everyone back and raise the bar again. And that's just part of understanding your people and understanding you, because it's a dance, right? It's a dance between your style, even their styles. And the more you know about them, which is another thing, right? Caring about your staff enough to know them. The more you know them, the more you know yourself, you're able to create those combinations that's going to get the best out of them.
Yeah. I think listening to that, sometimes, I go home and I'm like, man, that was too rough or too harsh. But sometimes I have to remind myself that the reality is that if we don't hit the goal or we don't hit the target, guess what happens in a leadership standpoint? People have to get let go. And that's what we're trying to avoid. At least I am. I don't want to let people go. But hey, if we miss the mark, and in business, the mark is income, right? And that's why when there's massive layoffs, it's really because it's just we didn't hit our goals. And that's my 2 cents on that one. So I appreciate you putting it that way, because now I know how to explain it to the team. We're navigating different terrains right now, fellas.
For sure. It's like when the plane's going down, the pilot's just going to tell you what you need to do, and you need to listen, right? There's times for that. And I've asked over 1,000 people this question in workshops. I've said, who has been a leader in your life that brought out great performance from you, that you really admire as a great leader? And I'll get them to write that name down, or a couple of names down. Then I say, why did you write their name down? What is it about them that made you think of that? And then I get them all to compare answers, and we have everybody, say their answers. And it all comes down just to a couple of things. One is that they cared about me. They challenged me. They pushed me. They supported me. And well, honestly, and they set an example. It's those 4 buckets. Think about that. Over 1,000 people I've just asked. It all comes down to those 4 buckets. Cared about me, pushed me, right? Supported me, and then also set an example. And those things work together because, the goal is not to be a liked boss. The goal is to be an effective leader, not to be a liked leader. Now, effective leader will be liked, but they won't be liked all the time, because I don't like it when someone pushes me in the moment. My ego flares up. And that could be at the workout group with my friends, and then one guy's like pushing us and I'm like, who does he think he is in the moment? But then I push harder and then I'm like, dude, why are you complaining? This guy just helped you get better. Yeah. So these are those moments as a leader too, where it's tough, because you have to be willing to hold that tension that not everyone's always happy with you all the time, and not get your validation from people liking you. Otherwise you'll cave on expectations. So yeah, have high standards. High performers will love working for you. Have high standards, then support people. And then when they hit them, man, you're praising them up and down. And that actually creates a powerful combination that people love, because then they're like, man, hey, working for Brian, he brings out the best in me. And so I want to stay here.
Yeah. The first 3 are pretty easy, but the last one you brought up, which is basically leading by example almost, I struggle with that one, and I want to ask you this, because some of the teams I lead, I know I'm no longer in the sales seat. I'm no longer in the marketing seat. What does that mean by leading by example then? What does that look like for a leader? Is it showing up on time? Is it, showing up to all the events? Is it really showing up with the level of energy? Like, what do you think is the most effective way to do the last part that you brought up?
Leading by example is being consistent with whatever it is you're expecting, right? So if you're not on time for meetings, that's not a big deal if you don't expect anyone else to be on time. Like in sense, you have like a loose, flexible thing. Okay, that's fine. But if someone's going to call you on if you're going to call people on the carpet for being late, then of course you got to lead by example. And that's a good way to think about it. But also remember this, as you grow and as you scale, and all of a sudden now you have leaders who lead teams, their example is more important to their team than your example to that team, because they don't see you as much, right? Or maybe they see you on a Zoom meeting once a week. So there's not much of an example that they can see day to day. But in those moments are important. They still are going to look at your energy, your mindset. Integrity can come out like, hey, no, we're not doing that. That wouldn't be right. But at that point, then it becomes making sure that you're the example to your leaders and calling them to be the example to their people. And that's the multiplication of leadership.
Okay. Yeah. I was messing with PJ because I went back into selling a little bit because I was like, look, I know it's hard. We're in the real estate business where half of our division, they're still in the buying and selling of real estate for clients. And I said, all right, I get it's hard. Let me go show you guys that I can do it. But now, it's not something I typically do. So I said, but let me lead by example. But now I'm learning maybe that wasn't the thing because it ended up taking so much time away from, the rest of what I do. So I'm glad you brought that up. I'm taking notes. So I got to make sure that the leader of that division is selling and doing the work. And they are. But, sometimes people, I don't know where to teeter-totter between those lines of leadership. Sometimes I'm like, okay, maybe I got to go back down a couple steps to see if I can guide the shepherd up, or whatever the case is. So.
You bring up a great point, Brian. And this is a challenge that happens to leaders sometimes. They hear that message. I got to lead by example. And so the CEO is like, let me go down to the dock and unload boxes with the guys in the trucks. Well, that's actually not a great use of time for the CEO. Now, if the CEO is going to do it, yeah, just pop in for a little bit and show up and roll up your sleeves, have fun with everyone at the dock, and then, tell them they're doing a great job and then get back out of there. That is responsible. It's not responsible. Like, I'm going to go back down and, it's one thing if we're the only one to teach them some skill, but this goes back to where we started, the tough part of letting go. And for leaders, as we go up the ladder, we have to let go of the role that we just came from. Doesn't mean that we won't parachute in from time to time, fix some things, raise the standard again. And it can even be challenging because, as you guys know, like, times change quickly. And it's like, yeah, I was good at sales 5 years ago, but it's a different world. But you don't have to go back down and prove yourself that you can sell now. You proved yourself you could sell then. And now what you're expecting is for them to figure it out and be great salespeople now, right? So you're not having to call on your example today. You're calling on your example more universally, if that makes sense.
I have another question because now I have staff and people that work for us that are in their 50s. I have staff and people that are in their 40s, 50s, and even 20s, and actually as low as probably 16, depending on which industry you go into. Through your experience, do you feel like different age group and different generations are requiring different forms of leadership? Like, that your millennials require this and your Gen Z require another. And I think now there's Gen Alpha, right? Is it the same? Can we apply your same principles to all generations, or are you noticing the style has to change a bit?
The style has to change. The principles are universal, right? So if you think of the principles, care about your staff, and that creates reciprocity. Help your staff grow, right? Recognize great work. Help them understand they're making progress. Give them feedback on progress. Help them connect to purpose in their work. Don't micromanage them. Like, those principles are universal. But yes, how we apply them is going to be different. So, for example, let's say you're leading a boomer who is about to retire. Well, they grew up in a world where they're not used to their boss caring about them in a way that we would more expect now today. And so a lot of times in their mind, they're like, well, that's not important. But it's not important just because they actually never experienced it. And so they're like, well, I don't think this is important. And once they realize, like, my boss is 20 years younger than me, but you know what? They care about me. They have my back. They respect me. And I respect that. And then they're going to reciprocate. So there are nuances, of course, to every generation. And I think the younger generations do want more purpose and significance. They're less willing to just sit there and grind in a meaningless job. But that's not a slight on them. It's more of a condemnation on us who are older that we did that for decades. Like, what's wrong with us, right? Like that. It's more like that's the problem. The younger generation is not the problem. We're the problem that we actually put up with that. But it's just what it is. So as you learn about your staff, again, you care about them, you help them grow, you give them feedback. There's going to be certain needs that arise with different generations. Some generations it might be tougher for them to hear feedback. Okay, well, that doesn't mean that they're going to just destined to not be good at hearing feedback. That's a coaching issue. So lean into that. Don't be afraid to have those conversations and go, hey, like, I notice when I talk to you about some of these things, you really get knocked down, you get discouraged for
Like
days.
PJ.
I don't want that to happen. So how do I need to talk with you so that you're not discouraged for 3 days? I need you to bounce back quick, right? So
What do you have from PJ? No stumbling, fumbling this time. What is it?
Nothing, man. I mean, honestly, like you guys are just sharing some amazing knowledge, some amazing game. Like I'm just sitting back and just soaking it all up, man. These leadership questions are great.
Well, PJ, you know, the thing is that PJ started off as my main videographer, but now he leads a team of videographers. And so this is very important for him too, because it's hard, right? And I remember PJ coming to me and he goes, man, this sucks. Like they're not doing what I'm saying. They're not listening. You know, the expectations not being met. And then, so, I mean, we all have to step into it somehow, some way. We all have to learn. And I'm just lucky to have made a lot of mistakes through leadership. And that's why I'm so lucky to be in front of James to ask all these questions, because I don't know what I don't know. And I'm like, I don't know if what I'm doing is even right, but at least the perspective and being open-minded is allowing me to like really absorb in it. Because now I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back. I got to go change my ways a little bit. Or maybe on this method, I'm still going to go hard and go fast on how I'm running things. But this is awesome. I mean, I'm very excited. James, quick question. I want to quick it back to the book. What can people expect from this book right here? The Call to Climb. What are they climbing?
The Call to Climb is so different than the leadership book. Basically, the Call to Climb is, I would use the word spiritual, not religious, spiritual, but it's a story, it's a fable about somebody who their life is out of alignment. You know, that feeling like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, but I'm not sure, or why am I unhappy in this job? And it's when we are ignoring the conversation with our soul, right? That inner part of us that wants to get our attention, but we just ignore it. Like, no, I'm just going to keep going. Or our fear doesn't let us stop and listen that maybe we have to change course or start that business. So the story is about someone who is lost in the Bolivian wilderness and stumbles into this remote village in the Andes Mountains, only to find out that this village has been expecting them, because there's this magical mountain that calls people to climb when they need to have a conversation with their soul, but they haven't been listening. And so the whole story in this climb is about them getting rid of the masks, getting rid of the ego, getting rid of the goals that actually are, you know, from their parents or from society, and figuring out what's my path so that they can discover their path, conquer their fears, and ultimately fulfill their destiny. So that's what the book's about. It was a lot of fun to write. I've been sitting on it for literally 10 years.
Wow. So you give some strategies and tactics on how people can drop their ego and drop the society's expectations.
100%, but it's not so prescriptive. Had I written, that book got rejected by publishers 10 years ago, and I'm so glad it did, because it would have been more prescriptive, like, here's the 5 points and here's the 7 shifts. And so this is more in the story. It gives people flexibility of how they read it, but for sure, it walks you through understanding that you're less in charge of your life than you think, and your programs and your paradigms are actually running the show. And until you're willing to get self-aware and take back control of the steering wheel, you're just going to live on autopilot, and you're going to keep repeating the same years you've been living. And even in that way, you can predict your future. It's whatever it is, your past. So if you want to take back control of your life, you got to start to get intentional. And really, that's what the book's about.
And I say it all the time. It sounds like the main word that comes to mind with your book is clarity, but your version of clarity. And a lot of people always try to push down their ideas and what they think your life should look like. And I always tell people, like, that's the quickest way to depression and having a sad life. You got to know what you want in life. And so I can't wait to actually dive deeper into this book, because I got to go and spread the word too. I want people to live their dreams and do what they want to do. But of course, they still got to make money. So you got to make it lucrative somehow, some way. I am in California, and a lot of people that we speak to in California, it's very expensive. So you can't just get by on nothing. Right, PJ?
Definitely.
You got to make money. There's a story there's a thing in the book that comes from my life where the main character is carrying this stone in their pocket. It's a gold stone, and they engraved on it is $1 million. And they've been carrying this pocket in their pocket like every day for years, but they're no closer to this $1 million. Well, that's a story from my life. And one day I pull out this stone, and then I ask myself, why do you want to make $1 million? Like in 1 year, like, why do you want to do that? And then I realized because then I would feel successful, which then showed me that, why I don't feel successful. So the goal really wasn't $1 million. It was to take away my shame. So the $1 million isn't wrong, but the reason for that $1 million was. And when we start to get really honest with ourselves about why is this actually important to me, that's where we're able to get more clear about what our heart really wants in our life. And like I said, hey, the $1 million isn't wrong, but don't pursue $1 million to take away shame. Yeah. Pursue $1 million for some other reason, but make sure it's a good one.
Of your time teaching people leadership, and this is going to be my final question because I know you have to go and PJ's got to go back to editing. What's one big takeaway with leadership? Is can anyone be a leader, or do they have to be born into it, or can they develop the skills to become a great leader?
So to answer that question, I'll say this. Not everyone can hold certain positions of leadership. Everyone can lead at some level because it really is about influence. But let's say, can anyone be the CEO of a Fortune 100 company? No. It takes a certain type of person with a certain type of programming that they had when they were young. So in that way, they were born with the potential to do that. Could I lead a Fortune 100 company? I could, but at great cost. At great cost to me that it wouldn't be worth it. Whereas some other person, they can just do that naturally. Not that it's easy, but it flows more from them. So it's understanding like you've got to be able to lead in the right context for you, right? And what you require. Like, could I be a general in the military? Probably not, right? But can I lead a not-for-profit of 10,000 people? Yeah, for sure. No problem. Right. So it's understanding who you are. And at the end of the day, leadership is a set of skills that anyone can learn. You can learn to become more influential, right? You can care about people. You can learn the coaching skills. You can learn how to recognize people. So much of leadership is actually what your grandmother would have told you how to be as a person, and then add the skills. And that's the superpower, combining those two.
I appreciate your time and everything today, James. How can people connect with you, and where can people find your books?
If they go to my website, jamesrobbins.com, that's 2 B's, jamesrobbins.com, you can find everything there, whether it's leadership or the new book, I Will Climb, or find me on LinkedIn and let me know that you heard us here with Brian and PJ.
Appreciate you. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Thank you so much. Peace.